Imagine being dragged to the back of a cathedral at your brother's wedding by your own mother, who hides your secret identity as a multi-million-dollar artist to pretend you're a lawyer. Elara's story of betrayal and explosive reveal will leave you stunned. Hit like if you've faced family secrets like this. Thanks for having me, Eliza. Sharing this feels liberating, finally owning my truth after years of hiding. It's time to inspire others to fight for their real selves. I never thought my own mother would try to erase me at my brother's wedding. But there I was, 30 minutes before Thomas was supposed to marry the love of his life, getting shoved into the back pew of St. Mary's Cathedral like some shameful family secret. "You're an embarrassment," Mom hissed, her perfectly manicured fingers digging into my shoulder as she physically positioned me in the last row. "Don't talk to anyone. Don't even look at anyone." I nodded, frantically scrubbing at the paint flecks still visible on my knuckles with a wet wipe. The cathedral's soaring Gothic arches seemed to mock me from above, all that beauty, all that artistry, and here I was being told to hide like I was something dirty. "I told them you work in corporate law," Mom continued, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper I knew so well. "Don't you dare contradict me, Elara. These people, Richard Sterling and his family, they're important. They collect art for God's sake. The last thing they need to hear about is your situation." My situation. 5 years of building a career she refused to acknowledge, and it was still just my situation. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I'd been standing in another imposing building, the University of Chicago Law School Dean's office, sliding my withdrawal papers across his mahogany desk while Mom screamed in the hallway. "You're throwing your life away for finger paints." Her voice had echoed off those academic walls like a battle cry. "Do you have any idea what we sacrificed for your education?" I'd looked the dean straight in the eye and said the words that changed everything. "Art isn't a backup plan, sir. It's my calling." Mom had gone silent then, completely, utterly silent. And somehow, that silence had been worse than all her screaming combined. Walking out of that building, I'd felt like I was stepping into my real life for the first time. I had no idea that Mom would spend the next 5 years trying to drag me back into her version of who I should be. Now, sitting in this back pew like some kind of family outcast, I touched the concealed star tattoo on my wrist and did the math that always made me smile. Last month alone, my gallery sales as Nyx had brought in over $800,000. The piece that sold to that private collector in Manhattan? 7 figures. If only they knew their embarrassing failure could buy this entire cathedral and still have enough left over for a decent vacation. But Mom didn't know. Nobody in my family knew. To them, I was still the dropout who threw away a promising legal career to play with paintbrushes in some dingy studio apartment. They had no idea that my work hung in penthouses from New York to Los Angeles, that collectors fought bidding wars over pieces I'd created during my lowest moments. The anonymous artist thing had started as protection, a way to build my career without Mom's constant interference. Now it felt like a prison of my own making. After the ceremony, watching Thomas beam with joy on the cathedral steps, my heart nearly broke when he introduced me to the wedding photographer. "Meet my sister Elara," he said, his arm around my shoulders, genuine pride radiating from every word. "She's absolutely brilliant with corporate law, just got considered for senior partner at her firm." The photographer smiled and asked about my specialty, and I felt that familiar sick twist in my stomach as I mumbled something about contract negotiations. Thomas squeezed my shoulder encouragingly, and I realized this was even worse than Mom's threats. She'd made him genuinely proud of a lie. My brother, my sweet, loving brother who used to beg me to draw pictures of his favorite superheroes, was standing there glowing with pride over a version of me that didn't exist. The real me, the one whose art had touched thousands of lives, might as well have been invisible. During cocktail hour, I was hiding on the garden terrace when Richard Sterling, the bride's father, found me nursing a glass of champagne and staring at the sunset. "Beautiful evening," he said, settling beside me on the stone bench. "Though nothing compared to the piece I acquired last year, have you heard of an artist called Nyx?" My heart stopped, actually stopped. The anonymity adds to the mystique. Richard continued, his eyes distant with genuine emotion. But that piece about family rejection I bought, God, Nix understands pain like no other artist alive. The way they captured the agony of being invisible to the people who should love you most. It's like they painted my own grief directly onto canvas. I managed to nod, not trusting my voice. That piece, the invisible daughter, I'd painted it during my darkest moment when Mom had missed my first gallery showing because she was at a country club event, telling people I was still figuring things out. I'd give anything to meet them, Richard said softly, to tell them how their work saved my life after my wife died. Art like that, it's sacred. What Richard didn't know, what none of them knew, was how close he'd come to meeting me 3 months ago. I'd been in my studio apartment, paint-stained and exhausted from working on my latest series, when my phone rang. Elara, the voice had been professional, excited. This is Marina Chen from the Guggenheim. We've been trying to reach you about a retrospective. The line had gone dead. When I called back, they told me someone had already declined on my behalf. Later, I'd found out why. Mom had been intercepting my mail at the family home. I'd stupidly kept it as my emergency contact address, and she'd been fielding calls meant for me. She needs to focus on getting a real job, not these art fantasies. I'd heard her tell someone on the phone when I confronted her about it. No one's calling about anything important. An $800,000 commission offer, a MoMA retrospective, international gallery representation. Nothing important. 30 minutes before the reception, I found Mom in the hallway outside the bridal suite, touching up her lipstick like she hadn't just spent 5 years systematically destroying my dreams. We need to talk, I said. She looked at me in the mirror, her expression shifting to that familiar mask of controlled disdain. About what, dear? About the lies, about the calls you've been intercepting, about the fact that I'm Nix and you know it, and you've been sabotaging my career because you can't stand that I chose my own path. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Her eyes went wide with something that looked like panic, maybe even fear. Then it snapped back into place, harder than before. Try me, little girl, she said, turning to face me fully. I'll tell everyone you've been pretending to be a lawyer while living in fantasy land, making up stories about being some famous artist. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected mother of the groom, or the daughter who couldn't even finish law school? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper again. You want to destroy your brother's wedding with your delusions? Go ahead. But I promise you, by the time I'm done, everyone in that reception hall will think you're a pathetic wannabe who lies about having a real job. Is that how you want to be remembered? Standing there in that hallway, staring at the woman who gave me life and had spent 5 years trying to suffocate my soul, I realized something that changed everything. I was done hiding. 15 minutes before the reception, I thought I could still salvage this. I thought if I could just get Mom alone on the garden terrace, away from the guests streaming toward the reception tent, I could make her understand what she was about to destroy. I was wrong. Mom, please, I said, catching her elbow as she supervised the final touches on the centerpieces. Can we talk privately? Just for 5 minutes. She turned to me with that smile, the one she reserved for public moments when she needed to look like the perfect mother. But her eyes were ice cold. Of course, darling, she said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. Everyone, let me tell you about my daughter Elara's wonderful news. My blood turned to slush. She wouldn't. Not here, not with Richard Sterling's business associates within earshot, not with. She's just been considered for senior partner at her law firm, Mom announced, her voice carrying across the terrace like a bell. Youngest candidate they've ever had. We're so proud of our successful lawyer daughter. A small crowd gathered, murmuring congratulations. I felt trapped, pinned like a butterfly under glass as Mom's smile grew sharper. Tell them about your specialty, dear, she continued, her grip on my arm tightening. Corporate acquisitions, isn't it? So much more stable than those silly, creative pursuits some young people waste their time on. Richard's colleague, a distinguished man in his 60s, stepped forward with interest. Acquisitions, which firm? The silence stretched like a taut wire. Mom's fingernails dug into my arm through my dress sleeve, and I could practically hear her thoughts. Try me, little girl. Actually, I started, my voice barely steady. I need to. She's being modest, Mom interrupted, her laugh bright and deadly. You know how these artistic types can be, always living in fantasy land, making up stories about having important careers. But Elara finally grew out of all that nonsense and got a real job. The words hit like physical blows. She'd done it. In front of witnesses, she'd made me sound like a delusional wannabe while simultaneously claiming credit for my success in a field I'd never practiced. Everyone will think you're a pathetic wannabe who lies about having a real job, she whispered in my ear as the crowd dispersed. Is that how you want to be remembered? 10 minutes before the reception officially began, I escaped to the art display area, desperately needing a moment to breathe. The irony of seeking comfort near artwork wasn't lost on me. Even here, I was hiding from my own identity. That's when Richard found me again, his face glowing with the kind of enthusiasm that made my chest tight with recognition. He was standing in front of a small canvas mounted on an easel, completely transfixed. Magnificent, isn't it? He said, not looking away from the painting. I acquired this piece through an anonymous gallery sale just last month. The dealer wouldn't tell me anything about the artist except that they go by Nix. I stepped closer, and my heart nearly stopped. It was Silent Screams, a piece I'd painted during one of my darkest nights when Mom had told her bridge club that I was still figuring things out instead of mentioning my first solo show. The brushwork here, Richard continued, pointing to a section where I'd layered pain in shades of midnight blue and silver. It's like the artist was bleeding emotion directly onto the canvas. Look at how they captured the isolation, the way the figure reaches out but touches nothing but emptiness. He turned to me then, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The way this anonymous artist captures the agony of being unseen by the people who should love you most, it's like they painted my grief directly onto canvas. After my wife died, I felt invisible to my own family. But this made me feel understood. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This man, this stranger, understood my work better than my own mother ever had. He saw the pain I'd poured into every brushstroke, recognized the truth I'd been screaming silently for years. I keep hoping I'll meet them someday, Richard said softly, just to say thank you. Art like this, it saves lives. 5 minutes before the reception officially began, the wedding coordinator's voice crackled over the sound system, and my world tilted sideways. Ladies and gentlemen, as you make your way to your tables, we have a special surprise for tonight's celebration. Mr. Richard Sterling has graciously agreed to share a slideshow of his private art collection, specifically his prized Nix pieces, as a toast to how art brings families together. The blood drained from my face. A slideshow of my work, with my signature visible to everyone. I watched in growing horror as technicians wheeled in a large projection screen and began testing the equipment. The first image flashed up, my signature, that distinctive star and crescent mark I'd been using since art school, blown up to 3 feet wide for everyone to see. We'll begin the presentation during dinner, the coordinator continued cheerfully. Mr. Sterling has some beautiful words to share about the power of anonymous art and the search for connection through creativity. My hand instinctively moved to my wrist, where that same signature was tattooed in delicate black ink, hidden beneath the long sleeves of my hand-painted dress. The dress Mom had called appropriate for someone in your situation. The technician adjusted the projector, and my signature grew even sharper, every curve and line of the star perfectly visible. In 30 minutes, that image would be displayed behind Richard Sterling while he talked about desperately wanting to meet the artist. And I would be sitting at the family table, forced to watch in silence as my own father-in-law begged to meet me while my mother made sure I could never reveal the truth. The reception began with formal family photos, and I found myself positioned between Mom and Thomas, trying to smile while my world crumbled around me. "Elara, darling, hold your glass higher," the photographer called out. "Let's show off those successful lawyer hands." I raised my champagne flute, acutely aware of the paint stains I'd scrubbed from my knuckles just hours before. The camera flashed, and I knew that somewhere in those shots would be evidence of who I really was if anyone bothered to look closely enough. "Beautiful," the photographer continued. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, could you stand behind the happy couple? And Elara, you're the successful sister, right? The lawyer, your mother was telling everyone about your promotion. Another flash, another lie captured for posterity. Mom leaned close to my ear as we held our poses. See how easy it is, she whispered. Everyone believes the story. Don't ruin it now with your fantasies. But as the photographer moved in for close-ups, I caught him frowning at his camera display. He'd accidentally captured my knuckles in sharp detail, and even after all my scrubbing, there were still faint traces of ultramarine blue under my nails. Interesting, he murmured, but Mom was already steering him away toward other shots. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight, just like everything else about my real life. 15 minutes into the reception, I was making my way back from the restroom when I heard Thomas talking to his new bride near the head table. I ducked behind a floral arrangement, not meaning to eavesdrop, but his words stopped me cold. I'm just so proud of Elara, he was saying, his voice warm with genuine affection. You know, she went through this embarrassing art phase in college, used to paint these weird, dark pictures that honestly made me uncomfortable. But I'm so glad Mom helped her see sense. My heart cracked, actually cracked. What happened to the paintings? His bride asked. Oh, I helped Mom move them to the attic years ago, Thomas said casually, like he was discussing old furniture. We thought it would help Elara move on, you know, stop living in the past. And it worked. Look at her now, successful lawyer, making real money, contributing to society instead of just making things. He laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking in my chest. I'm just glad Mom helped her see sense. Elara's way too smart to waste her life on finger paints like some bohemian dropout. She's got a real career now, real respect. That's what matters. I pressed my back against the wall, fighting the urge to scream. Those paintings in the attic, some of them were early pieces that galleries had been asking about for months. Pieces that could have launched my career years earlier if anyone had bothered to take them seriously. But more than that, hearing my brother, my sweet, loving brother, talk about my art like it was some shameful phase I'd grown out of. It was like hearing him say he was glad the real me had died. 30 minutes into the reception, I escaped to a quiet corner near the gift table and pulled out my phone to check the mail that had been forwarded from the family home. What I found made my hands shake so violently, I nearly dropped the device. 3 letters, 3 opportunities that Mom had intercepted and hidden from me. The first was from Mo M.A. Ms. Nowak, this is our final attempt regarding the retrospective. Your representative informed us that Nix isn't interested in the exhibition, but we wanted to reach out personally before proceeding with other artists. The February slot remains open if you reconsider. The second was from a private collector in Dubai. The $3.2 million offer for your Fractured Family series stands until month's end. Please advise. The third was from my gallery in Soho. Elara, we've been trying to reach you about the Times interview. They want to do a feature on anonymous artists breaking into the mainstream. This could change everything. $3 million, a Mo M.A. retrospective, a New York Times feature. All blocked by a woman who thought I was wasting my life on finger paints. I looked up to see Mom across the room, laughing with Richard's business associates, playing the role of proud mother while systematically destroying every opportunity that could have given me the recognition I'd earned. The slideshow screen loomed behind her, waiting to display my work while she made sure I could never claim it. That's when I realized the truth that would change everything. My mother wasn't just embarrassed by my choices. She was actively, deliberately sabotaging my success because she couldn't bear to be wrong about who I was supposed to be. And tonight, with my signature about to be displayed 3 feet wide in front of the one person who could change everything, she was about to win. Unless I stopped her. 45 minutes into the reception, the lights dimmed and Richard Sterling took the microphone with the enthusiasm of a man about to share his greatest treasures. I sat frozen at the family table as the first slide appeared on the massive screen behind him, my own artwork, blown up to 3 feet wide. Fractured Family, Richard announced, his voice rich with emotion as he gestured to the painting I'd created after Mom missed my gallery opening. This piece captures the devastating isolation that comes from being misunderstood by those closest to you. The room murmured appreciatively while I gripped my champagne flute so hard I thought it might shatter. Mom sat beside me, her smile never wavering, but I could feel the tension radiating from her like heat. The slide changed. Silent screams, Richard continued. Notice how Nyx uses shadow and negative space to convey the agony of having a voice but no one willing to listen. My throat closed. That painting, I'd finished it at 3 a.m. after overhearing Mom tell her book club that I was still figuring things out, instead of mentioning my first commission. And this masterpiece, Richard said as the final slide appeared, The Invisible Daughter. The way Nyx captures the pain of being unseen by those who should love you most, it's like they understand family trauma on a cellular level. The irony was suffocating. Here was a man who truly understood my work, celebrating it with genuine reverence, while I sat 3 tables away, forbidden from claiming even a whisper of recognition. Mom's hand found my wrist under the table, her fingernails digging into my skin like a warning. Nyx understands family pain like no other artist alive, Richard concluded, his voice breaking slightly. Whoever they are, they've turned their deepest wounds into something transcendent. The room erupted in applause, while my soul died quietly in the back. During the brief pause between Richard's presentation and dinner service, I saw my chance. He was standing alone near the projection screen, studying my signature with the intensity of a man searching for clues. This was it, my moment to finally step out of the shadows. I stood, smoothing my hand-painted dress, and took 3 steps toward him before Mom's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Elara, darling," she called out, loud enough to turn heads. "Could you help the waitstaff serve drinks? I know you're comfortable with that sort of work from your artistic days." The words hit like a physical slap. Every conversation in our vicinity stopped as guests turned to stare. Richard looked up from the screen, his expression shifting from confusion to something that looked almost like pity. "Of course," I managed, my voice barely steady. "I'm happy to help." Mom's smile was razor-sharp as she approached, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper. "Remember, dear, we all have our place in the world. Some of us create beauty and others serve those who do." She pressed a serving tray into my hands, the weight of it feeling like chains around my wrists. "Now go be useful while the important people discuss real art." I watched Richard turn back to the screen, the moment lost, as Mom guided me toward the kitchen like I was staff. The other guests had already moved on, but the damage was done. In their eyes, I'd been reduced from family member to help, just another girl in a homemade dress, too eager to approach her betters. An hour into the reception, Richard Sterling took the microphone again, but this time his demeanor was different. Gone was the art collector's professional enthusiasm, replaced by something raw and desperate. "Friends, family," he began, his voice carrying across the silent room, "I need to share something personal with you all." He gestured to the screen behind him, where my signature, that distinctive star and crescent mark, glowed like a beacon. "This artist, Nyx, saved my life. After my wife died, I was drowning in grief, convinced that no one could understand the depth of my loss. Then I found their work." His voice cracked, and I felt my heart breaking in real time. The way they capture pain, transform it into something beautiful, it brought me back from the edge. Their art reminded me that suffering shared is suffering halved. Richard's eyes swept the room, landing on each table with desperate intensity. "I'm offering a $500,000 reward to anyone who can tell me who Nyx is. I would give anything, to meet this extraordinary artist and tell them personally how their work saved my life." The room buzzed with excitement, guests whispering and speculating. My hand moved instinctively to my concealed tattoo, that same signature mark hidden beneath my sleeve like a secret burning to be revealed. "If anyone knows who Nyx is, please," Richard continued, his voice breaking with emotion, "I'm begging you, help me find them. I need them to know that their pain wasn't wasted, it became something that heals others." I started to stand, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for my entire career, recognition, validation, a chance to step into the light. My chair scraped against the floor as I rose, every eye in the room turning toward me. Richard's gaze found mine across the crowded space, and for one perfect moment, I saw hope flicker in his expression. My hand moved toward my wrist, fingers finding the edge of my sleeve. All I had to do was push back the fabric, reveal the tattoo that matched the signature on the screen behind him. $500,000. Recognition. The chance to finally claim my work. Wait, Mom's voice cut through the moment like a gunshot. She lunged for the microphone, practically yanking it from Richard's hands with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Before we continue this treasure hunt," she announced, her voice bright with false cheer, "our successful lawyer daughter Elara has something important to share about her new senior partnership." The words hit me like ice water. I stood there, frozen halfway between sitting and standing, as every person in that room turned to look at me with expectation. Richard's hopeful expression shifted to polite interest, the moment of connection severed as cleanly as a blade through silk. "Go ahead, darling," Mom continued, her smile sharp enough to cut. "Tell everyone about your big promotion, or are you going to disappoint us all again?" I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes, the pressure of expectations built on lies. Richard waited patiently, probably wondering why the lawyer daughter had looked so moved by his plea for an artist. My mouth opened, but no words came. How could I explain that I was the artist he'd been searching for when my own mother had just painted me as a corporate lawyer? How could I claim my work when she'd spent 5 years convincing everyone I was someone else entirely? The microphone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as Mom thrust it toward me, her eyes glittering with malicious triumph. The room had gone completely silent, 200 guests waiting for me to speak about a promotion that didn't exist, a career I'd never pursued. "Well," Mom prompted, her voice sickeningly sweet, "don't be modest, dear. Tell everyone about your wonderful success in corporate law." I looked out at the sea of expectant faces, Thomas beaming with pride, Richard still holding hope that someone might know his mysterious artist, the wedding guests who'd been told I was someone I'd never been. The projection screen loomed behind me, my own signature blazing 3 feet wide, mocking me with its proximity. I was standing inches away from the evidence that could change everything, but trapped by a web of lies I'd never chosen to weave. I started then stopped. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Mom stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. "Choose carefully, little girl. You can play along and keep your brother's wedding intact, or you can destroy everything with your delusions. But remember, who do you think they'll believe? The respected mother who's been bragging about her lawyer daughter for months, or the girl who couldn't even finish law school?" She pulled back, her public smile returning. "Go ahead, darling. Tell everyone exactly who you are." The trap was perfect. If I told the truth about being Nick's, she'd paint me as delusional. If I lied about the promotion, I'd be complicit in my own erasure. Either way, she won. But as I stood there, microphone in hand, staring out at a room full of people who thought they knew me, something inside me finally snapped. The microphone trembled in my hands as I looked out at 200 faces waiting for me to speak. In the front row, Richard Sterling watched with polite attention, probably wondering why the lawyer daughter had seemed so affected by his plea. Behind me, my own signature glowed on the screen like a star I wasn't allowed to reach. Mom stood beside me, her smile never wavering, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She thought she'd won. Thought she'd backed me into a corner where I'd have to choose between exposing myself as a fraud or playing along with her lies. But standing there, feeling the weight of 5 years of suffocation, I realized something that changed everything. I was already dying. Every day I stayed silent, every moment I let her speak for me, every time I pretended to be someone else, I was dying by degrees. The real Elara, the artist who poured her soul onto canvas, was being erased one lie at a time. And suddenly, the choice became crystal clear. I could die slowly, invisibly, safely, or I could die spectacularly, truthfully, in front of everyone. "You know what, Mom?" I said, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone. "You're absolutely right." Her smile faltered slightly, confusion flickering in her eyes. "It's time I told everyone exactly who I really am." The room leaned forward collectively, sensing something momentous about to happen. Richard's attention sharpened, and I saw Thomas sit up straighter at his table. Mom's hand moved toward the microphone, but I stepped back, keeping it out of her reach. For 5 years, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, I've been living a lie. Pretending to be someone I'm not, hiding who I really am because I was afraid of disappointing the people I love. The silence in the room was absolute now, electric with anticipation. But tonight, watching a man beg to meet an artist whose work saved his life, I realized something. I looked directly at Mom, seeing panic begin to bloom in her eyes. Some things are worth disappointing people for. My hand moved to my wrist, fingers finding the edge of my sleeve. Some truths are worth telling, no matter the cost. And with that, I pushed back the fabric and revealed the star tattoo that would change everything. The microphone felt like it weighed nothing now as I stepped fully into the spotlight, my hand still concealing the tattoo that would change everything. But first, I needed to set the stage properly. Mom stood frozen beside me, her smile finally cracking as she realized I wasn't following her script. You know, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system, in the art world we have a saying, real artists don't need to announce themselves. Their work speaks first. I could feel the makeup Mom had forced me to wear beginning to sweat off under the lights, but for the first time in years, I didn't care. My authentic self was bleeding through, paint-stained and unpolished and absolutely unashamed. Richard, I continued, looking directly at him, you spoke so beautifully about Nix's work, about how it captures family pain and transforms it into something healing. But I wonder, what would you say to someone who's been living that exact pain? Someone whose family has spent years trying to erase their authentic self. The room was completely silent now, sensing something momentous building. Richard leaned forward, his collector's instincts clearly pinging that something extraordinary was about to happen. Because the thing about authentic art, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, is that it can't be faked. It comes from lived experience, from real wounds, from the courage to bleed truth onto canvas even when the people you love most want you to stop. Mom's hand shot out toward the microphone, but I smoothly stepped away, keeping it out of her reach. The movement caused my sleeve to shift slightly, and I saw Richard's eyes catch the flash of black ink on my wrist. You know, in the art world, we have a saying, real artists don't need to announce themselves. Their work speaks first, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like a challenge. Tonight, I think it's time to let my work speak for me. I moved away from the family table, walking deliberately toward the microphone stand that had been set up near the projection screen. Every eye in the room followed my movement, the tension palpable as guests sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. At the microphone, I raised my champagne glass high, as if offering a toast, and let my sleeve fall back completely. The star tattoo on my wrist caught the light perfectly, every curve and line of the distinctive mark clearly visible to the entire room. Behind me, the projection screen still displayed my signature, that same star and crescent design, blown up to 3 feet wide. The visual connection was impossible to miss, undeniable in its perfection. To my brother and his bride, I said, my voice ringing with newfound confidence, may you always have the courage to sign your real names to the work that matters most. The room erupted in whispers as guests began pointing between my wrist and the screen. The matching signatures were identical down to the smallest detail. The way the star's points curved slightly inward, the delicate crescent that cradled the lower point, the confident flourish that completed the mark. Richard's face had gone completely white, his eyes fixed on my tattoo with an expression of dawning recognition that bordered on reverence. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a man trying to process a miracle. That's, he whispered, his voice barely audible through the growing buzz of conversation. The signature, it's... I smiled, feeling 5 years of suffocation finally lifting from my chest. It's mine, Richard. Every piece in your collection, every brushstroke that spoke to your grief, every moment of understanding you felt, that was me, I'm Nix. The champagne glass trembled in my raised hand, but my voice remained steady. Around us, phones were already coming out, cameras flashing as guests documented the moment. This wasn't just a family revelation anymore. This was about to become viral content, shared across social media platforms before the night was over. I've been hiding behind anonymity for 5 years, I continued, my eyes never leaving Richard's stunned face, not because I was ashamed of my work, but because I was told it wasn't worthy of the family name. Tonight, I'm reclaiming both my art and my identity. Richard froze, his entire body going rigid as he stared at my wrist. The transformation was visible, color draining from his face, hands beginning to shake, eyes wide with the kind of shock that comes from having your entire world shifted on its axis. My God, he breathed, his voice carrying in the sudden hush that had fallen over the room. The signature, it's your. He took a step toward me, then another, his movement drawing every eye in the room. The wedding guests had gone completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, trays balanced in midair as they stared. Nix, Richard whispered, and the name fell from his lips like a prayer. You're here, you're real. The emotion in his voice was raw, unfiltered. This wasn't just an art collector meeting an artist. This was a man coming face to face with someone who had literally saved his life through their work. The piece about family rejection, he continued, his voice growing stronger as the initial shock wore off. The way you captured being invisible to the people who should love you most. You were painting your own experience, weren't you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Behind me, I could hear Mom making small, desperate sounds, but I didn't turn around. This moment belonged to me and the man who had understood my pain better than my own family ever had. Every brushstroke, I confirmed, my voice barely above a whisper. Every shadow, every moment of isolation, it was all real, all lived. Richard's eyes filled with tears, and I watched him struggle to process the magnitude of what was happening. The anonymous artist he'd been desperately searching for wasn't some mysterious figure in a distant city. She was the woman his own family had been dismissing as a failed lawyer all evening. How long, he asked, how long have you been sitting here, listening to me beg to meet you, while your own family? He trailed off, his gaze shifting to Mom for the first time since the revelation began. Don't listen to her fantasies. Mom's voice cut through the moment like a blade, high-pitched with panic as she lunged for the microphone. She's always been delusional about this art nonsense. But her interruption came too late. The room had already seen the evidence, already made the connection. Phones were recording, guests were whispering, and Richard's recognition was written across his face in unmistakable terms. The tattoo is fake, Mom continued, her voice cracking with desperation. She had it done to impress art clients for her law firm. You know how these young lawyers will do anything to seem cultured. The lie was so transparent, so obviously crafted in real time, that several guests actually laughed. But Mom pressed on, her composure finally cracking completely. Richard, please, don't encourage her delusions. She's been struggling with reality since she dropped out of law school. This is just another fantasy, another way to avoid taking responsibility for her failures. I watched my mother unravel in real time, her perfect facade crumbling as she realized she was losing control of the narrative. Her voice rose higher with each word, becoming more shrill, more desperate. She makes little paintings in her apartment and pretends they're worth something. I've been trying to help her face reality, but she keeps living in this fantasy world where she's some important artist. Thomas had risen from his table, his face a mask of confusion and growing horror as he began to piece together what had really been happening. Mom, he said quietly, what are you talking about? Elara is a lawyer. You told me. I told you what she needed to hear, Mom snapped, whirling to face him. Someone had to save her from herself. Someone had to make her see that finger painting isn't a career. The admission hung in the air like a confession, and I saw the exact moment Thomas realized the scope of the deception. Richard moved toward me with the reverence of a man approaching something sacred. Without hesitation, he dropped to one knee and gently took my tattooed hand in both of his eyes never leaving the star mark that matched his precious collection. Nix, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence of the room. You beautiful, brilliant artist. Your work brought me back from the edge of despair. How can I ever thank you? The sight of this distinguished man, this pillar of the art world, kneeling before me while my mother stood frozen in shock, was so surreal I almost laughed. Every phone in the room was recording now, capturing the moment for posterity. "Your invisible daughter piece," Richard continued, his thumb gently tracing the edge of my tattoo. "It saved my life. After my wife died, I felt completely unseen by my own children, forgotten by everyone I loved. But your art, it made me feel understood. It reminded me that pain shared is pain halved." He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face. "I've been searching for you for 2 years. 2 years of hoping, of offering rewards, of begging galleries for any information about the mysterious Nyx. And here you were, right in front of me, being hidden by." His gaze shifted to Mom, and his expression hardened with understanding. "Stand up, Richard," I said softly. "Please, you don't need to kneel." "Yes, I do," he replied firmly. "I'm in the presence of one of the most important artists of our generation, and I almost missed it because—" He looked at Mom again, his voice growing cold. "Because someone convinced me you were something you're not." The room erupted in applause as Richard finally stood, still holding my hand like it was made of precious metal. The sound was thunderous, overwhelming, and I felt tears streaming down my face as 5 years of hidden dreams finally stepped into the light. The applause died down to reveal a new horror for Mom. Guests were turning to her with expressions of confusion and growing anger. The whispers started small but grew louder as the implications of what they'd witnessed began to sink in. "Mrs. Nowak," called out one of Richard's business associates, a woman I'd met earlier who'd congratulated me on my legal career. "Didn't you tell us just last month that Elara was a corporate lawyer? Why would you lie about your daughter being a famous artist?" Another voice joined in. "You've been telling everyone she works at a law firm for years." "Wait," said someone else. "If she's this Nyx person, doesn't that mean her art is worth millions? Why would you pretend she was something else?" Mom sat down heavily in the nearest chair, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. The perfect composure she'd maintained for decades was completely shattered, leaving behind something raw and desperate. I was trying to help her," Mom stammered, but her voice had lost all its authority. "Art isn't stable. I wanted her to have security, respectability." "By lying about her success?" Richard's voice cut through her excuses like ice. "By hiding the fact that your daughter is internationally recognized, that her work hangs in museums." Thomas approached our table slowly, his wedding tuxedo somehow making him look younger, more vulnerable. "Mom," he said quietly, "the paintings in the attic, Elara's paintings, how long have they been up there?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Mom's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, and I saw the exact moment she realized there was no way out of this. 5 years, I answered for her, my voice steady and clear. "They've been hidden for 5 years, Tom, along with gallery calls, commission offers, and exhibition invitations." I looked directly at my mother, feeling something like pity replace the anger I'd carried for so long. "Mom, you spent 5 years trying to erase me. Tonight, the world finally sees who I really am." Thomas's face crumpled as the full weight of the truth hit him. He looked between Mom and me, his wedding day joy transforming into something that looked like grief. "Elara," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. I should have known Mom was lying. Your art was always extraordinary, even back in college. I trusted her when she said you'd moved on to something better." He turned to address the room, his voice carrying the authority of the groom on his wedding day. "Everyone, I need to apologize publicly. My sister isn't a lawyer. She's an internationally acclaimed artist, and I've been too blind to see it." The gesture was so unexpected, so purely Thomas, that I felt my anger toward him dissolve completely. He'd been manipulated just as much as I had, fed lies by someone he trusted implicitly. "When we get back from our honeymoon," he continued, looking directly at me, "I'm going to personally move every single painting from that attic to the main wall of our new house. Your art deserves to be seen, celebrated, honored." Richard stepped forward, his businessman instincts clearly engaged. "Actually, Thomas, I'd like to commission a piece specifically for your new home. Something about family, about truth revealed, about love that survives deception." He paused, a smile spreading across his face. I'm thinking 500,000 should cover it. Consider it a wedding gift that acknowledges the real Elara. The number sent another ripple of shock through the room. $500,000 for a single commission, from the bride's father to the groom's sister. It was the kind of gesture that would be talked about for years. And, Richard added, his voice growing stronger, I'm calling MoMA first thing Monday morning. That retrospective they offered, it's happening. I looked out at the room full of people, some shocked, some delighted, some still trying to process what they'd witnessed, and felt something unexpected wash over me. Not triumph, not vindication, but a deep, settling peace. Thank you, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly through the space. All of you, but I want to say something important. The room quieted again, sensing that this moment was different from the drama that had come before. I've learned something tonight, I continued, my eyes finding moms across the crowded space. The most beautiful art comes from the courage to be authentically yourself, especially when, the people you love can't see your value yet. I set down the microphone and walked to the guest book table, where an elegant pen waited beside the leather-bound volume. With deliberate care, I signed my name in the flowing script I'd perfected over years of gallery openings. Elara Nix Nowak. The signature felt like a declaration of independence, a reclaiming of both my birth name and my chosen identity. No more hiding, no more pretending to be someone else's version of who I should be. My next gallery showing, I announced, turning back to face the room, will be dedicated to the complexity of family love, to the ways we hurt each other while trying to protect each other, to the courage it takes to see past our own fears and truly witness the people we claim to love. Richard stepped forward one more time, his collector's enthusiasm fully engaged. The MoMA retrospective will be called Nix Revealed, 5 Years of Hidden Masterpieces. And Elara, he added, his voice warm with genuine affection, I think your mother's going to be very surprised when she sees exactly how successful her failed artist daughter really is. I looked at Mom one last time, sitting alone at the family table while conversations buzzed around her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the loss of the narrative she'd controlled for so long. But as I watched, Thomas sat down beside her and took her hand. Family, I realized, was complicated. Love was messy. And sometimes the most profound art came from learning to forgive the people who couldn't see your light while never again letting them dim it. The wedding photographer appeared at my elbow, camera ready. Ms. Nowak, he said with a grin, would you mind if I got a shot of that signature tattoo next to your actual signature in the guest book? Something tells me this is going to be a story people remember. I smiled, extending my wrist toward the camera, and felt the last of my hidden life fall away like a shed skin. Tomorrow, the art world would know that Nix had a face, a name, a family story as complex as any masterpiece. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, I was completely, authentically, unapologetically myself. And it was more beautiful than any painting I'd ever created. Elara, thank you for your courageous story. It reveals how standing in your truth can shatter years of deception and heal deep wounds. This tale teaches that family love must include acceptance of one's authentic path, no matter the cost. Was Elara right to reveal all at the wedding? Share your thoughts below, and if this moved you, subscribe for more real justice stories. Remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.